moving into our next panel, which is the Bosch panel, discussing whether we are sure we want AVs in our cities. Will they help or hinder? So with that in mind, I'm going to welcome to the stage from the Law Commission of England and Wales, Conor Champ, from Bosch, Jacob Camera, and our moderator for the Bosch panel, founder of Reed Mobility, Nick Reed. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to the panel session. Conor, Jacob, do come to the stage. To be honest, I was quite surprised that I was allowed to run with this title for the session, because it is an open question, I think, and it's been hinted at in some of the discussions in the previous panel session as well. I mean, there's certainly a huge opportunity for mobility. Cities are where the demand for mobility is greatest, but it's also where the challenges are most complex, where the difficulty of automating the driving task is most challenging. And there's already, you could argue that we might end up adding automated vehicles to already congested streets. So that's the sort of discussion I'd like to get into today. And welcome to the stage, Conor and Jacob from the Law Commission and from Bosch. Conor, why don't you introduce yourself and say what you've been up to?
Sure. Can everyone hear me? Yep. I'm Conor. I'm a lawyer at the Law Commission of England and Wales, which some of the earlier speakers referred to. First things first about the Law Commission of England and Wales. We are what's known as a statutory independent body, so statute has created us in 1965, and our basic job is to make sure that the law is fair and up to date and works. Every now and again, the government comes to us with a project. They ask us to look at a particular area of law with a view to reforming it or ensuring that it works. And about 4 years ago, the government came to the Law Commission and asked us to review the law around automated vehicles with a view to their deployment in the next few years. So we've undertaken a 4-year review of the law around automated vehicles. We undertook a series of 3 consultations before writing our final report with our recommendations, which outlined a new framework for AVs, which we felt was needed. The government has since responded to that, and that document was also referred to earlier by the members of the first panel. That's the CAM 2025 document. And in that response, the government basically set out that it agrees with our recommendations for a new regulatory framework and is going to implement them almost in totality. There are differences on small things, but they're essentially implementing all of our recommendations. Something I should note is that we present our recommendations to government. They can implement them as they see fit, or they can reject them. In this case, they seem to be moving forward with our recommendations and have taken them on board.
Great. We'll get into those more shortly. Jacob.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jacob, working for Bosch currently as a product manager in that level 4 project team whatsoever, what Olaf currently presented. My track record is, actually I do have a background in mechanical engineering. I started in mechanical engineering, and then just over the course, pretty much in the beginning of my career, I figured out how beautiful software is, and then got into data, and from data into a research team for autonomous vehicles. That's maybe like 6 years ago or so. And then I was actually moving away from the car industry to a subsidiary of Deutsche Bahn, Ioki, where I was building software to make autonomous vehicle dispatchable for on-demand passenger transportation. And now I'm back basically to the car industry at Bosch, supporting the vehicle side to get those vehicles on the road.
And if I can start with you, we had the great presentation from Olaf and the video there. What are the real challenges about making autonomous vehicles, automated vehicles work in cities, and how will that scale to not just Stuttgart but many cities?
Well, in short, I guess, making it production ready. As you can tell from our video and many other videos out there, the basic problem is understood and solved in a prototype or pilot fashion. We don't know yet how to really get them through verification, validation, and final approvals, because it's a new topic, it's cutting-edge technology, it's a pioneering development phase. I think we're in a good position, or I'm confident that we are with Bosch, because we do have the expertise to bring sensors, which are required, and all that stuff to production. It's getting more complex from just the technical system, but also the challenges. But yeah, again, in short, making it production ready is the most important and challenging task.
And what about that complexity point? So, being able to detect different types of road user, understand how they're going to behave, you confidence that you can address those challenges?
We are confident. We offer demo rights to potential partners, customers. We wouldn't do so if we're not confident. We're showing those videos. And fortunately, this is not one of 100 videos where it worked. We developed like the core technology to be able to detect all sorts of other pedestrians, cyclists, in general, road participants. Yeah, but proving that it works always, again, that's the case. But we're not afraid of like deploying in other cities if there's a need to, or in other areas, even though like they might look different. They will look different. I just arrived yesterday in London, in the middle of London, and go down and I go, well, that's more chaotic to what I'm used to right now. But yeah, the technology is ready to see all things which are necessary and take decisions accordingly.
Nice. So Connor, you mentioned the recommendations. Congratulations for getting that report together. What are some of the key ones relating to how self-driving vehicles might be adopted in cities?
Sure. So I think just the headline ones, the key recommendations to note are the authorization process. So we recommended a new authorization process for automated vehicles. That process will basically check that vehicles can safely and legally drive themselves, and after that, that your vehicle, if it passes, is classified as self-driving for the purposes of law in Great Britain. So you have the authorization process. We've also proposed an in-use regulator. The in-use regulator is very similar to an in-use regulator in other industries. So think the Civil Aviation Authority in aviation, they're quite similar to that. So they make sure that vehicles stay safe on an ongoing basis, and should infractions occur, it's their job to use the powers that they have to ensure that vehicles are improved. And we've also proposed new legal players. So what we call the user in charge, that's basically the user of a vehicle that can drive itself some of the time. So you have your motorway driving feature. You're a driver until you get to the motorway, you engage the feature. At that point, you become the user in charge, and you're not responsible for the dynamic driving anymore, and you don't have legal responsibility for that. So that's the first legal actor that we defined. We also defined what we call the ASD. That's the automated self-driving entity, and that's the developer or manufacturer who puts forward a vehicle for authorization, and they basically say to the regulator, we want this to be authorized to self-driving, and we will be responsible for it. So if a vehicle, be responsible in that for the driving task, I should say, not for insurance or maintaining the vehicle if they've sold it to someone else, but for the driving task. So if it goes through a red light, the regulator will ask them why it's going through red lights, for example. So that's the ASD. They have to guarantee the safety on an ongoing basis. And the last important legal actor is what we call the NUIC operator, and that's for vehicles that won't have a driver. So if you're running passenger services, for example, you won't have a driver in your vehicle. We have said that they need an operator, though, and that's someone who will supervise them so that if it comes to a stop, In the middle of a busy intersection in London, there's an operator who knows that's happened and then can take appropriate actions to remove the vehicle or have someone remove it. So I think those are the key recommendations. We've also proposed other things in relation to marketing and also passenger permitting. We proposed a passenger permitting scheme where lessons could be learnt, but the major ones are the safety assurance scheme, the authorization scheme, I should say, the in-use regulator, and the legal actors. So
would a transport authority, TfL, or a local authority like Greenwich, would they interact with the regulator if they had concerns about the way AVs were operating in cities? Yeah, so the way we've framed it with the in-use regulator, we very much want an open dialogue. That's our hope for the in-use regulator. We actually avoided giving them many criminal sanctions that they could level against people because we wanted to facilitate discussion. So if someone does have a concern that something odd is happening with an AV in their particular area, they can go to the in-use regulator and flag this. So if things are speeding in a particular area or driving in bus lanes is one that comes up quite a bit, the local authority can report that to the in-use regulator. And the in-use regulator can then go to the ASD, who's responsible for the driving, and have a discussion with them about why this is happening and how to fix it. And that brings me on to my next question, actually, which was about the no-blame safety culture. This is a concept you've talked about a lot in your documents. You've mentioned the parallels to the aviation industry. Can you explain to us how you imagine that working with AV developers? How would that be interpreted by them? Sure. I mean, it was something that was put to us from the very beginning of the project, that what people want to have happen in the automotive industry is what's happened in aviation and other transport industries like rail. They want more of a focus on finding out what's happened rather than blaming any particular person. And with the advent of automated vehicles, all of a sudden it's going to be very hard to pin something on one particular person. If a vehicle malfunctions, there's all sorts of software that have gone into that, there's all sorts of engineering that's gone into that, and also the way they interact with the roadscape. There's a lot of different players who control the roadscape. So people have said that this is a good opportunity to make automotive much more like what happens in other industries. So we have tried to take that on board. We have proposed an investigation branch, so if something happens with an automated vehicle, if there's an incident, there would be an investigator who would produce an independent report and provide it to the authorities and also to manufacturers. That would be along the lines of the Air Accident Investigation Branch. The RAC Foundation, by the way, have also proposed at the same time a road incident investigation branch, and it looks likely now that that branch will have responsibility for AVs, so that fulfills our recommendation in that way. These sorts of investigation branches can facilitate a lot more open learning and lessons learned, so if something does happen, it's going to be fed back into the system. Everyone who's part of the chain can learn lessons from what's happened, and then things can be made safer. Our in-use regulator also comes into this. I've already touched upon this a little bit. We haven't given them many criminal prosecution powers precisely because we want them to facilitate conversation and just talk about problems with developers and with authorities when they occur. So compliance notices, improvement notices, and fines would be their main staple of sanctions that they could use. And those have worked very well in aviation and railway to foster this safety culture. Jakob, how does that fit with Bosch's vision for how safety will be achieved? You kind of on board with this no-blame safety culture idea?
Well, I guess for everyone, it's true that we want to design safe systems. We have a pretty good slogan at Bosch in general for that, invented for life. If you're not safe, you're probably not saving lives, but rather killing them. Sure, we want to contribute in the maximum way possible for safety with our system, but I think it's safe to say that if there's something like a legal framework with such standardized ways of reporting, that helps everyone. safety topics should never ever be like intellectual property in a way that I know that there's an unsafe situation or something happened and I'm trying to hide that just to, I don't know, maybe let my competitors run into the same situation. Because in that case, we're not talking about like technology, but we're talking about lives. So just repeating, it shouldn't be intellectual property in the first place. And everything which contributes to that with standardized ways of reporting and then again, like on top, publishing those results for the others, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. One of the slides in the presentations earlier, I think from Hannah from the DFT, was referenced the Great Self-Driving Exploration, this project where automated vehicles have been taken to different parts of the country. People have been allowed to experience them, give their views on what they think about the technology before and after having experienced it. So what do you think we should be doing to get the public to engage, to get their buy-in, make sure they understand the implications for vulnerable road users about the deployment of this technology? How do we approach this topic of public buy-in?
I think it's worth differentiating between the users and the one around the vehicle. I'm not really concerned about the users. Our goal is to design a good product. It always should be the goal. And once a product is good and it works and it feels safe and it is safe, people are adopting it if it makes sense. If it solves a problem, they will adopt. I was very lucky to deploy autonomous vehicles with partners back in 2018. Actually, it was already deployed in 2017. I joined 2018 the company, and we deployed in rural areas in Bavaria, probably like a very conservative audience, so to say. And the people, they just jumped on it. They were curious. They were like people like trying to fight it too, yes, but people started using it. They liked it. It was super slow and like people were laughing on the first day, but then they started using it on the second day. So I'm, again, not concerned that we won't find users because, I don't know, everyone's scared or so. Like, it's just like, it happens so fast. With new technology, once it's there and it works, people will use it. But the other side, people who don't want to use it for other reasons, or they don't have to use it because like they prefer other modes of transportation, there are often like people really going to fight, like even fight new technology, no matter what technology. And just looking back at deployments I was part in, it always just helped being transparent, good communication, not only with like telling, but also listening, especially for pilot programs. If you go to a new district or so, just like offer, I don't know, an evening in the pub, in the local pub, invite the people, answer questions, tell them about it. It always helps. We have people like coming, being like angry. They were planning to deploy in their district, and they left and they actually liked the idea. Now that it doesn't always work, obviously, but yeah, communicating to them, making it safe, maybe showing actively that you're anyway like in a program, or you're only allowed to deploy under certain rules, which maybe includes a framework like what you just told us. Tell them, listen, if there is anything, you will hear it, you will see it. We're gonna be transparent, we have to be transparent, we want to be transparent. Such events, probably there's not that only like single action you can take to make everyone happy, but I think there are many places where you can start working to really make everyone aligned on the topic.
Yeah, that's my experience of that great self-driving exploration is giving people the experience, telling them what the implications are. They do buy into it, and they want to see more of that education. So you should be telling other people about this. So yeah, that's been really insightful for me.
Sorry, just adding, telling them why you are actually doing it. And yes, I do love the technology. I'm like a big fan of like solving that complex problem of highly automated driving. But we're doing it to solve a real problem. And if you, that's an experience I had. If you start talking about the problem which you are actually addressing, it's a different story.
Yeah.
If you just go there, I want to deploy highly automated vehicles, and forget to tell like, yeah, we want to improve your mobility.
Yeah.
By the way, it's like accessible for everyone. It is different.
Just on that, I mean, I think transparency was something that came through quite strongly in our consultations. People did want this transparency. They did want to know why things were being deployed, and they wanted justification for deployment as well. Many groups, I mean, we spent 3 years consulting, so we got to talk to many, many different groups, and they all wanted justification and transparency. It was a key consideration. That's why we think the in-use regulator should also be publishing reports every year, so they should do a wholesale assessment of how safe AVs are, and then be publishing those reports periodically. I think we suggested every year. Obviously, that might be implemented differently, but that would facilitate transparency and public acceptance that, okay, we can see that these vehicles are safer. There are metrics that show they are safer, and they are acceptable for that reason.
Yeah, and so I wanted to give time for a couple of questions from the audience. So, on that point, you know, one of the things the regulator will be charged with is showing that they are indeed safe enough, the phrase that's come up multiple times. Now, the recommendations suggested that would come down to the minister's judgment. How did you arrive at that conclusion, and what sort of factors would influence that judgment, do you think?
So, part of the legal definition of self-driving in Great Britain will likely be that you need to be safe. So a vehicle will be driving itself if it can do so safely and legally. So that begs the question, what is safe then? Someone's got to make an assessment about the acceptable level of risk. We consulted on this extensively. We looked at different standards for how you would judge the safety of an AV. So do they have to be safer than an average driver? Do they never have to cause a fault? Do they have to be careful and competent? And when we consulted on it, there was basically no agreement. People had problems with every single metric you could throw at this. Some people suggested new metrics. Some people said that you can't compare human drivers with AVs because they'll make different types of mistakes. So this will fail at the get-go. Others said definitely don't use numbers. So numbers, and I think CDEI, the Center for Data Ethics and Innovation, produced a report that said numbers are very problematic as well. In the end, the person, or the correct person we thought was appropriate to make the decision about the appropriate level of public risk was the Secretary of State, the Minister. It needs to be a political decision, and we put that forward, and most people agreed with us. So the Secretary of State, with advice from technical experts and specialists, would make a decision about the acceptable level of public risk. In the CAM 2025 document, which is the response document I was talking about, the government seems to be going for careful and competent, or equivalent to a careful and competent human driver, which is a very high bar, but I can certainly understand why they want to go for that high bar. They want to leverage all of the benefits of AVs and really make them as safe as possible. And I believe that they're, as was said earlier, they're consulting on that at the moment. So they're still inviting views on that aspect.
So yeah, we do have time, I think, for one or two very quick questions. So anyone in the audience like to ask a question to Jakob and Connor? Thank you.
Hey guys, Dami Adebayo from the Rudin Company. I have two questions around standards, sort of from a legal and technical perspective. So on the legal side, once AVs, level 4 AVs become proven, assuming they become proven to be safer than human drivers, where do you think you would draw the line in terms of implementing those features for all vehicles on the road? And I think an example there would be like anti-lock braking systems becoming a standard, and other human drivers then should they still be allowed on the roads? And then on the technical standards side, more for Jacob, do you think enough work is being done between different, AV designers and manufacturers in terms of how vehicles from different suppliers will communicate with each other and take advantage of that connected environment?
So I'll take the legal side. I mean, the thing that I often talk to, which I haven't been able to discuss today, but many people in the room will be aware of, is that vehicle standards and regulations actually have a huge international component to them. So the UN ECE set vehicle standards, they have vehicle regulations. At an EU level, you have whole vehicle type approval, and Great Britain will have its own type approval system as well. My understanding is that a lot of these systems are being discussed at a UN ECE level, and over time, as you get more of these automated features in vehicles, there will be regulations for them that will percolate through the system, essentially. So once they become accepted, they become UN ECE regulations. Those types of regulations will then be able to be type approved and approved by our vehicle approval authorities. Our authorization system is, at the moment, it's agnostic. So we basically will accept a vehicle that gets approval. So if it were to get approval via these regulations, that's acceptable. The way we proposed it it's flexible though. So in the short to medium term, you might have vehicles that don't adhere to any international standards, but they would still be able to be approved by GB authorities through one of the schemes they have for vehicle approvals, and then get authorization. Long term, it might just be that the authorization authority in Great Britain really looks to those international regulations, but that will be down the road a bit, I think.
Okay, before I jump to the second question, not sure if I understood slightly that question also, like if there are safe, proven safe level 4 systems, will we see something like private car ownership or human driving is not allowed anymore, like that direction? If that was the case, I don't think so. And second take is, I think we don't even have to talk about it, because if we win with automation for driving, we're gonna be able to design systems giving comfort, reliability, and availability and accessibility, so that we will see people switching without even asking if they are still allowed to drive or not. Second part, let me recall the question. Sorry about that, can someone help me? Like it was, yeah, just repeat.
Yeah, it was effectively just our different suppliers. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Thanks. I think for the time being, most of the manufacturers are focusing on solving problems as much as possible from the vehicle point of view, using own sensors and own logic to understand the environment around the vehicle in a way to be safe. Because with like that pioneering challenge we have right now, it's, I think, hard to show real collaborative development, and that's what you need basically if you want to have different manufacturers communicating in real world with each other. So I think that's something which is a little bit delayed to the initial development of those vehicles. And also technically it's very challenging, because every technology which you've built or uses or rely on needs a level of integrity in your like approvals and in your verification. And communication between vehicles or infrastructure is a bit tricky when it comes to that integrity required. And you gotta have to ask yourself the question, what information can you get from other vehicles or infrastructure which just like maybe helps you to show a better driving behavior, maybe stopping earlier, not hitting the brakes too hard. But if you start using information which you need to be safe, not better, but safe in the first place, it is challenging to get the communication done in a way that you can show that it works in the required integrity level. Does that answer? Okay.
Yeah. Well, Connor, Jakob, that's been a fantastic panel. I don't think we've fully definitively answered the question, but I think we've covered a lot of topics that give us some assurance that if and when it does happen, it will be done in the right way and will be done safely, most importantly. And hopefully, if it's done in the UK, we'll have Emma as the voice of the automated buses that we
I'll
see
sign up for that now.
on UK streets. But Jakob, Connor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to the Bosch panel.